Anneliese with Calvert Library, and we are here for an It's Elementary, where we do all sorts of fun projects with science and art, and we've got a really good one coming up a little bit later. It's all about oil and water and how they don't mix together, and it's going to be really colorful and fun, so I hope you'll stick around. But first, I want to share a story with you, and this is a really beautiful book. It's called The Brilliant Deep, Rebuilding the World's Coral Reefs. And it's written by Kate Messner, and the pictures are by Matthew Forsythe. And I want to say thank you to the publisher, Chronicle Books, for letting us read the story today. And this is such a great book. It's all about how important it is to be nice to the oceans, to protect the oceans, and we'll learn about what one man did to do so. So, let's dive right in and see what's going on.
It starts with one. One night, after a full moon, the corals begin to spawn, releasing first one, then millions of tiny lives, until the waters swirl like a snow globe. Some become food for hungry fish. Some are washed into the deep sea. Some drift in the currents until they come to rest not too deep on the ocean floor. If one is lucky, it lands in a place where it can grow. This one will begin a coral reef. Ken Nedimyer grew up near Florida's Kennedy Space Center, watching America race towards the moon. Before men took off in rockets, Ken's father worked at NASA as an engineer. Ken watched his father's team send unmanned rockets, Little Joe, Redstone, Atlas, toward the stars. Men followed, Alan Shepard, John Glenn. It seemed like just about anything might be possible if you set your mind to it. But Ken's dreams weren't in the stars. He loved the ocean. He watched TV shows about underwater explorer Jacques Cousteau. He visited the beach whenever he could, swimming far out to a world of angelfish and sea stars. The reefs of the Florida Keys teemed with life. They painted the ocean floor fire red and murky gold. How could the reefs grow so large? What made all the different colors and shapes? How could such tiny creatures build such elaborate homes of rock? Ken learned to scuba dive and began collecting fish to keep and study at home. At one point, he had 30 aquariums in his bedroom, all bursting with life. Ken's favorite place was always out on the reef, until things began to change. One summer, hotter than the rest, Ken noticed the corals were losing their color, and there weren't as many fish. The sea urchins had started to die. They are the gardeners of the reef, tiny groundskeepers who control the algae. But Ken didn't know that at the time. Even scientists didn't understand what an important role the sea urchins played until they were gone. Ken watched his favorite place in the world begin to fade away. The reefs were dying, and it seemed like there was nothing he could do to save them. But one day, that changed. Ken was all grown up, operating a live rock farm in the Florida Keys. Live rocks aren't really alive. They're rocks covered with algae, mollusks, sponges, and other invertebrates. They're used in saltwater aquariums as decoration and to filter waste from the water, turning poisons like ammonia and nitrates into harmless compounds. This makes the water safer and healthier for everything that lives in it. And growing them is really just a matter of patience, placing rows of bare rocks on the ocean floor and waiting for the marine life to move in. On one moonlit night, a nearby coral colony spawned, and a few of those delicate lives found their way to Ken's rocks. They grew into staghorn corals. Staghorn corals are protected, illegal to take from the ocean floor. But the law says if a coral colony grows on a live rock farm, the owner can keep it. Ken could have sold his specimens to someone with a saltwater aquarium, but instead, he and his daughter had an idea. As the corals grew, they cut off pieces and attached those pieces to other rocks. They discovered they could use those first colonies to grow more and more corals. What would happen if someone grew a coral colony and then tried to plant it on a dying reef? Would it grow? Could that colony help rebuild the reefs Ken loved? Could a reef come back to life? Ken made plans to go to the reef, where he'd loved diving as a kid, to find out. He selected his coral colonies. He loaded his scuba gear and supplies and set out for the reef. One hopeful dive, one optimistic experiment. 6 small coral colonies, each one the size of a hand with the fingers stretched, glued into a limestone surface where a reef had once flourished and was now bleached and barren. Would they grow? Ken and his friends came back to check on the coral colonies again and again. Each month, they had grown larger. It was too soon to say if the reef would fully recover, if the fish would return, but it was a beginning. Ken started a group called the Coral Restoration Foundation, a small army of volunteers on a mission to restore the reefs. They hang bits of coral on special underwater trees and lines where the corals can grow. When the corals are large enough, these farm-raised colonies are loaded onto boats with volunteers, dive equipment, and tools. Then it's out to a new home, one the corals will help to build. Volunteers take great care with this homecoming. They search for just the right spot, a place where each coral colony can hold on once it's grown enough to attach to the reef on its own. Divers scrape off any algae. They use chipping hammers, scraping, and banging to get the surface even and smooth. Then, with a careful dab of epoxy, just the size of a Hershey's Kiss, volunteers attach the coral colonies, piece by piece, arm by arm, hoping they will grow on their own. Today, the transplants are not only surviving, but also reproducing. Ken's group has planted tens of thousands of coral colonies on reefs in the Florida Keys. And now he's working with other countries, teaching people how to grow corals of their own to save the reefs they love too. Tonight, the moon will be full and bright. The corals may spawn, and if one tiny life lands in just the right spot, another new colony will grow. And then another, and another, and another. It starts with one.
And that's the end. So I hope you enjoyed that book. Thank you so much for reading it with me. It's interesting to learn how Ken and his friends did their part to save the ocean, by planting all of those corals. Let's think of some other ways that we can treat the water well and keep it nice and healthy. You could never throw your trash in the water, right? That's an easy one. And maybe if you're at the beach, you can pick up some litter so it doesn't get in the water. And a third one I can think of that's really important is to keep oil out of the water. You really want to keep it out of the water because it's so unhealthy for sea life. It makes it hard for fish to breathe. It even affects mammals. It strips off all of their natural oils from their coats, so it makes it hard for them to regulate their temperature or even to float. So I have a project that I want to share with you where we're going to demonstrate how oil and water do not mix. So I'm going to go over, get my materials ready, and we'll get started. Okay, so first things first, we have to make sure we have all of our materials in order. And I mentioned earlier, this is an experiment about oil and water. So first things first, you need your oil. And I'm gonna use baby oil because it's see-through, and I think that works best for the experiment, but you can use whatever you have on hand. If you've got olive oil in your pantry, that's great. Even canola oil. It might even be interesting to see how the colors mix with different types of oil. So we've got the oil, we need our water. So I have a few canisters for water. However many colors you're gonna use, that's how many canisters you'll need. I've got my food dye all ready to go. And then straws. However many colors you're gonna use, you need that many straws. And I'm using paper straws because it's important to keep plastic out of the ocean since we're talking about oceans, but you can use whatever you have on hand. And then last, but certainly not least, you need a glass dish. And it can be a cup, it can be a mason jar, it can be flat like mine, whatever you have available. You just want to make sure that it's see-through. So I am going to go ahead and change the camera angle and we'll get the experiment started. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do, we have our 3 containers of water. We have to dye them with food dye. So I'm going to put just a couple drops of different colors in each container. And then I'm going to take my different straws and just give it a little swirl. Make sure it's all the same color. All right, so we have our water all set. Next, we're going to take our oil. I'm going to take my baby oil and I'm going to pour it into my glass canister. Just like this. Okay. So we have our vat full of oil. Now all you're going to do is you're going to take your straw and you're going to pipette little drops of water into the oil, and you're going to see what happens. There we go, I've got my blue ones. Let's try with a different color. Let's do some of the red. Okay, and then we can't forget about the yellow. Let's do drops of yellow. And that's all there is to it. As you drop your water into your oil, you want to observe what's happening. Are the water and the oil mixing together? What if I give it a little swirl? What happens then? Ooh, do you see the little dots? Right, so it looks like that, like I said, because oil and water don't mix. Water has polar molecules, and it's only drawn to other polar molecules. So you can see at the bottom the oil is kind of sticking together, blending together down there. And yeah, so when the oil and the water hit each other, they kind of pull apart. So I'm going to do a couple more drops in here, and then I'll share with you what mine looks like. So you can see from mine, I got sort of a tie-dye effect with mine. The colors all stayed separate and the water sunk to the bottom, the oil was up top. I hope that you get some really beautiful colors and maybe yours will turn out a little bit different. So thank you so much for joining me for It's Elementary this week. I had a blast. I hope you did too. And remember to stay tuned to all of Calvert Library's social media channels for more fun stuff like this. And I'll see you next time. Bye.